Welcome to today's Entrepreneur, a program about the entrepreneurial spirit that drives Quebec business, presented by FL Montreal. My name is Dan Delmar, and filling in for my co-host Mike Newton tonight is our former co-host Josh Miller. Welcome back, Josh.
Hello, Dan. How you doing?
There's that hello. We missed you. I'm good. How are you?
Doing great. Notwithstanding all the craziness that has definitely happened this year.
It's been quite the year. Tell us quickly, where have you been? You've moved on from FL, and you're in a very interesting business right now.
Well, I am in aerospace and aviation, and but thankfully we're more on the defense sector, the military side. So we're not on the commercial side, which has obviously been devastated. And as we know in Montreal, we're big into aerospace here. So a lot of the commercial business has, let's just say, people have had to get a little creative in what they do with their businesses. So thankfully that, and it's a really interesting because it's not just Canada, it's worldwide. And the fact that this pandemic is around the world, of course, every single one of our locations gets affected. So never a dull moment, that's for sure.
When you talk to your contacts internationally, are they optimistic about 2021, or what's the sentiment in the international business community right now?
I think it depends where. Basically, we're Canada, US, Australia, and New Zealand. And I would say, well, as we can see in the US, it's very divided. So some will say, yeah, 2021 will be great. And others will say, well, what are you talking about 2021? It's 2022. I think from a New Zealand standpoint, they have done a tremendous job of keeping their cases down to a minimum, as has Australia. But they've gone, certainly in New Zealand's case, a very, very strict lockdown. And that's what's put them in a great aspect or standpoint from the number of cases. The flip side of that coin is one of their largest industries is tourism, and that's in the dumps. So the only way that that's going to come back is if they loosen up a little bit. And where do you draw the line? And Australia, broken down by province, as you might see, there's some provinces, like in Canada, there's some places that are doing well, some places that are not. But all in all, people are looking more towards the latter half of 2021 to be a little bit more normal than the first.
Excellent. And our profile this evening is Annick D'Amours from Trois Femmes, Un Coussin. Not sure if they actually started with Un Coussin, but she's built it into a very interesting business that covers all kinds of homeware, very beautiful art for the home. And Annick will join us in a little while. But first, Josh, some news and notes like we used to do back in the day. And this from Forbes.com, mistakes to avoid during a virtual meeting presentation. And I know at least one prominent pundit, a CNN pundit, got caught literally with his pants down on Zoom. Josh, dress and go to work every morning is my advice for people that work from home. Dress and go to work every morning.
It's amazing how some people have kept their standards and in some cases elevated them, and others are like, well, what's the point? I'm home, people will want me or like me for what I offer and not necessarily how I look. But and of course, it depends on what business you're in. It's certainly in the aviation side, it might be less important as we deal with governments and army bases around the world. But the reality is you still got to look a little bit professional, a little bit something, but forget the look, forget that aspect of it. The technology, make sure that at least it's working, so that when you start a meeting at 3 p.m., it doesn't start at 3:20 p.m. because you're trying to get all the things, put together and sounding right and whatever. So I think getting your technology down is absolutely an aspect to it. No question about it. Now that's on the back end. Certainly when you're talking about the CNN and on the front end, there's no question that you could be very self-conscious. I know what I do. I turn off my video so I don't have to look at myself when I talk, so I don't lose focus and lose concentration. That to me is certainly helps me. I try to look in the camera, although it's interesting because depending on the number of screens and how the setup is, your camera could be high up, but your image is down. So it looks like you're always looking down and not at the person in the eye. So I like to try and look at the camera, or at least place the image as close to the lens as possible. Little tricks that you can do to at least show that you're engaged in that conversation, because as we know, it's not the same as as being in the same room, even if you are 6 feet apart.
And just, keep the pants on. That should be a basic as well.
And keep the pants on, or at least keep the camera above the waist.
This from Harvard Business Review: 4 ways to reconfigure your sales strategy during COVID. I was never the best salesperson, but I feel uncomfortable pitching people at this time. I feel like I'm a burden.
Have you changed the way you pitch people, Dan, like during this time?
I haven't really done a whole lot of pitching lately, to be honest, for that very reason. I'm trying to create value through newsletters, through blogs, giving away some crisis material, but I'm a little shy to pitch.
And certainly understandably so. And everybody's character is different, and there's no question. And when we talk to Annick a little later, we'll see that she's a couple of partners, and they really try to play to their strengths. So between Annick and her partner Sandrine, they really try and do what each of them do best. For businesses and pitching or whatever, I understand maybe you need that other people in your organization and get the strengths up. That being said, find a way to get in front of your customer. The reality is the sales experience today is not what it is, or not what it was, and might not be what it was going forward. So find something a little bit unique, find something a little different. It's like an elevator pitch. You got to find your opening line. Once you get your opening line, the rest should follow.
For us, I think, and for a lot of millennial businesses, it's give away a bit of your time. That's often what it comes down to, is just share your knowledge.
I think that's always been that way. We've always professed in the many years we've been doing the show, give to get. Can you give a little bit and share what that knowledge you have, what a taste for what they can expect going forward, and in return, they'll hopefully build that trust, or professional trust, that you'll take going ahead.
Let's welcome in our guest. She is the co-founder of Trois Femmes, Un Coussin, Annick D'Amours. Welcome, Annick, to today's Entrepreneur.
Thank you to have me.
And the very first question, Dan, because I haven't asked it in a while, so I got to come to it, just so that the listeners have an idea of exactly what is Trois Femmes et Un Coussin. Annick, tell us what is your business about?
Trois Femmes et Un Coussin is a multi-business. Actually, we do import, resell. We are a reseller and importers of art de la table, which means glassware, porcelain, china, cutlery, first for hotel and restaurants, and we do have a business for retail.
And I know we're going to get a little bit to how COVID has affected you later, certainly on the restaurant side of your business. But before we get there, when did you start this business? How long ago?
20 years ago. Yep.
What were you doing before then? Were you doing something similar or you and your partners at the time?
Not at all. Actually, I've done 2 BAs, one in cinema and one in communication. My partner studied graphism and graphic design, and we were working in a restaurant at the time while we were studying. And then I was very into magazines and art de vivre, and I couldn't find anything interesting in Montreal, so I was just like, let's start my own collection. And I was working with Sandrine, which was just like a restaurant colleague, and she was painting at the time. And I asked her if she wants to join me in that kind of. It wasn't a business at the time. I didn't know what I was doing at all. And
where did the idea come from? Was the idea of the three of you, or?
No, actually, it's because I bought a house at the time, and my boyfriend was living in Paris. And that sounds like very, like glamorous, but it wasn't. Anyway, so then we bought a house in Montreal, and I was getting my stuff in Paris because I couldn't find anything in Montreal. Then I was buying magazines and so and so. So I wanted to bring art de vivre à l'européenne in Montreal. But I had all my ideas, but I'm not an artist. I'm just like someone with ideas. And Sandrine is an artist, so I was thinking that she might. Can paint on the dishes. So it was very very artsy-fartsy at the beginning.
And so this retail store, I mean, you have your own designs, or you've gotten designs from like you say, from Paris?
At the beginning, I'm sorry to interrupt. At the beginning, we bought the porcelain from stores in Montreal, and then we were painting on them, our own design. And then that was like, it couldn't last. But when we launched the company, because we were doing cushion as well. So we were three ladies, and we were making cushions, and we were painting on the dishes. So when we launched the business, all the restaurants owners and people we were working with, they were just like, oh, we want our own like dishes, like custom dishes, and nobody was really into cushions. So we were like, okay, so let's reorient our business, and let's concentrate on restaurants and on like custom dishes. And we didn't know how to do custom dishes. We didn't know how to import. We didn't know where to get the plates. So yeah.
How far into your start did this happen? Was this very quickly on?
Yeah, everything happened in a year. We just like, after like a few months, we were just like, okay, that's it for the cushion. Let's find a line in France. And like 20 years ago, like there was internet, but not that much. So we find a line in France, and then there was that show in Chicago. So I flew to Chicago, met this person, like, director of marketing, international, and so on. So I convinced him to have the line in Canada at the time. It was like, oh, Canada. And so we just ordered our first order, and we didn't have any money. So we ordered some samples. We went to see all our like friends were working in restaurants. They put a deposit, and with that money, we bought our first order.
You learned about cash flow quickly.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
And Nick, I'm curious. Few artists, endeavor to go into B2B. How did you get used to that idea, and when did you decide that was the time to make the pivot?
We just learned like from scratch. So there wasn't any like, okay, let's do B2B or let's do this, because it just came naturally. And we first import, and then it was restaurants, and that was our big business for until now. It's still. How does about the last few months?
How does a new business, kind of rookie entrepreneurs, go to Paris and get designers to agree to sell them your product?
I don't know. I guess that was convincing, or a bit. Like when you start a business, you don't know what you're getting into. But when you really want this to work and to happen, you just. If you're not like convinced of what you're doing, of course you're not going to convince them. But if you take a flight and then you go to Paris and you want to convince them, it's because you are convinced. And
did you have that's okay. Did you have like a written agreement? Did they just trust you? Was it like how did you ink that deal, so to speak?
In Europe, they do a lot of handshake agreement, like and at the beginning, I didn't want to get into an agreement because, I couldn't like tell them that I will buy in the next few years, like $2 million of dishes. Like it was hard for me to tell them that I can do this and I can do that. So the handshake for me was kind of cool at the beginning. Then when we get bigger, I was like, okay, we need a contract. So then I I asked our lawyer about that, and he was like, you know what, Annick, even if you have like a very strong like partnership agreement, if the factory closed tomorrow, like what are you going to do? Even if you have like an agreement. So why don't you just focus on your business, which is your branding, because your branding is always going to be the same, even if you change the company you're going to sell, even if you change your partnership with people. And I was like, that was a great advice.
No, listen, at the end of the day, you can put a lot on paper. There's no question about it. You can try and cover your rear end to the nth degree. But from Absolutely. A practical standpoint, you can't always protect it, or it might not be worth it to go chase after that mistake.
Absolutely.
Especially when somebody is overseas and, where's the best bang for the buck for the entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
Trois femmes et un coussin, you were three partners.
Yeah.
You're no longer three partners, correct?
No. There's Sandrine and I. Patricia left the boat like I would say 15 years ago. She got pregnant, she had a baby, and she wanted to stay home, take care of the baby. So
Was that okay? Was it a difficult kind of breakup or a partner departure?
it was at the beginning, it's always like sensitive because you're like, it's just sensitive. It's like your relationship is it's like someone is breaking up with you, but we are in very good relations still now.
Was there a financial breakup as well? Did you have a shareholders agreement? Did you?
The thing is, when she left, we were like, we weren't make any money. It was like maybe 4 years after the business we started the business, so we were still in debts, and so we didn't give her like a third of the debts we had. We just said, okay, let's leave it that way.
Annick, it's been tough for a lot of retailers, certainly people that have a lot of web-based businesses. How has this crazy year been for you?
It was very bad. I cannot choose a better word. It was very bad in terms of like 85% of our business is hotel, restaurants, and corporation, and 45% of our total year is in April, May, and June. So we lost like 45% of our business in 3 months. So it was terrible at the beginning because you don't know what's going to happen, and then you're like, okay, so there's no way this is going to kill my business. So you just roll your your shirt, and you focus on what's good, and you find solution.
And there's no question. There's a lot of strategies you can do, and I know you built recently an e-commerce site, and we'll come to that in a moment because that's always interesting to hear about. But let's just like kind of get down to the dollars and cents behind it, and not necessarily revealing numbers. But when you started your business originally, you were self-financed, or was there a bank involved?
We were self-financed big time. I mean, like the three of us at the beginning, when we were three, like our like tips money were paying our like business cards, and that's it's like exactly what was it all about. It was our tips that we were making in restaurants that was financing that project. At the time, it was really a project. And then we got a subvention or a prize. It was a prize. We win that prize for a plan d'affaires, business plan, and that gives us like $12,000. So we could surf on that. So we bought our first, like not equipment, but I mean like goods and plates and matière première, and then we got a loan from the BDC because at the beginning we didn't know how to do custom plates, but you need an oven for that. So we have to buy an oven. It's not an oven, it's a kiln.
Yeah, it's a kiln,
whatever
to cook the paint on the
exactly. So we bought a kiln. So and then my mother signed to get a small credit line, and then after a few years we were able to make it happen.
How was it dealing with kind of your banks or financial partners, if I can put it, back then, and what were they like? How have they been this year?
The bank were this year was incredible. But it was incredible for us in terms of we are a solid business now. So it's not like they were like, it's like, the first 6 months, because our financial year started on October 1st. So the first 6 months of our year was just amazing. We never had such a good year. So it was easy to just call the bank and said, okay, this is it, blah, blah, blah. And, with the government help as well, it was easy for us. I'm not saying that it was easy for everyone, but in terms of a, strong and solid company, which I consider we are, we could have a very good deal with the banks.
And you're located in the plateau, right?
Yeah.
Have you always been in that space?
Almost. We've been on the plateau for 16 years. Yeah. But we're off Broadway. We're not on a commercial street.
And is that location been good for you? Like, why that location?
Because at the time we heard that location was getting was getting vacant and available. And because we were working with restaurants, we didn't want them to think that we were going retail and they're going to lose their kind of we have a very, very special and beautiful relationship with our restaurants and hotel clientele. So we wanted to keep that. We didn't want to move into like a commercial street and start being like a boutique.
Mm-hmm.
There was no boutique at the time.
No, and being a boutique in and of itself is a marketing strategy, right? Because it's
Absolutely.
a little cachet, it's a little, you're not meant for the masses. Was that one of your more successful marketing decisions? Were there any other marketing efforts? And I know I'm leading into the e-commerce site during COVID, but even before there, was there anything else?
That again, it wasn't planned. I mean, we probably have had a certain nose for going at the right place at the right moment. It's our boutique is very niche, so people are coming to our boutique. They're not like bump into the boutique. Sometimes yes, but the fact that we are like at this place, it just give us a certain, how can I say that?
Je ne sais quoi.
Je ne sais quoi. Let's put it that way.
So now we're kind of, we're talking about marketing. There's, as we've seen in many businesses during COVID, where there's limited face-to-face contact, online business, online transactions, it was hard to escape that reality or that necessity for any business. How was your website before COVID? How is it today? And what's been the most difficult point to get from A to B?
It's two worlds if we compare 6 months ago and now. We had a website, but it was like nobody never told us until like 6 months ago that our website was like bad, like very bad, old website. But the thing is, people don't buy dishes on the web, not a lot. Even though now that we have a new beautiful website, it's because people wants to feel and touch. But from March until now we have a Shopify new website. We had help from this generous, amazing president of a company, big company who does Shopify website, who helped us pro bono to start building that new website. And Sandrine did all the work for the last 4 months. She's been working days and nights to put everything in the website. Now we have a beautiful, very sexy website. We just love it.
Was it difficult? I know it was more Sandrine you were explaining that was involved, but was it a lengthy process to get up and running, or is it not as daunting or as scary as it is, especially when you're using a good background?
Actually, we do have beautiful products. We do have beautiful pictures. We have taste. We knew where we wanted to go. So it means a lot of work. It's a lot of hours. If you don't have like $30,000 to spend on a website, you need 30,000 hours to spend on it.
No question. And I'm sure there's also, forget the visuals in front. There's a lot of back end. You have to collect a lot of information. You have to make sure it's set up properly. There's confidential information. We won't even go into the cybersecurity behind it. That's kind of a whole other level in discussion. And I guess there's all that setup, which I know is crucial to setting up that website. And we want to hear more about that from you, but also we're gonna talk a little bit more about that from a tax side of things as well.
And Josh, we're going to finish off with Annick D'Amours from Trois Femmes, Un Coussin and her one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur coming up in a few minutes. But first, we go to Ernie Furt, FL Tax Partner, for some advice on e-commerce and sales tax. Ernie, welcome back to CJD.
Always a pleasure.
And I know, Josh, Ernie knows the difference between doing e-commerce in Delaware and versus e-commerce in Michigan and all these different rules across American states especially, but we won't do all 50 states, maybe just the basics tonight.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's e-commerce. It could be worldwide. So there's so many rules and aspects behind it, but the basics are still there. The basics of, because it also depends, are you a service business or are you shipping product? but we're not going to steal from Ernie's thunder just yet.
You're doing quite well. Keep going.
Yeah.
I'll correct as you go along. That's fine.
Not at all. I guess e-commerce is not new to us, but there's no question that there's still a lot of detail behind it. So Ernie, when somebody says, I'm launching an e-commerce site, what are the first challenges that come to mind?
Well, first of all, one of the biggest challenges is how you're going to do it. Are you going to do it yourself? Are you going to go to Shopify? Are you going to go to Amazon? How are you going to go to Amazon? What are your plans effectively as to how you want to approach the e-commerce world? Because some people like to do it themselves. Some people like to do a combination. Some people say, I don't want to have anything to do with it. Let Amazon do it. Let Shopify do it. So that's the first question. Then the next question is, what do you want your customer to have at the end of the day? Do you want seamless service whereby they get the good at their premises, all delivered, all paid, no mystery bills coming in the mail from Canada Post or the Canada Revenue Agency or anything like that, or a state government? It's basically what you want. And what you want, it can be designed, depending on where you're going to do the business. Oh, I don't want to sell into such and such a place. Okay, so we won't. So we won't deal with that province or state. But a lot of people say, I just want to sell. I want to sell everywhere I possibly could. So then we have to take a look at where we want to do that sale. Let's focus on Canada first.
And exactly. And let's say we're dealing with a product. I mean, Annick is experiencing selling a product from her location. And, somebody's sitting in Michigan and wants to buy it and she's shipping it there. Does she have to worry about it differently than if somebody is sitting in the plateau 3 blocks away from her? It's all still online, but how does that work?
Well, there's differences and there's different thresholds in different jurisdictions, especially in the United States, and each of those jurisdictions are different. And either it goes by number of sales that you make in that particular jurisdiction in the U.S., or alternatively, you just decide to register in that state, pay and charge that sales tax to the individual, because the states are different than Canada, because they won't necessarily mail you something. They're going to kind of force you to self-assess on your personal tax return. That's that use tax line, if you've ever seen that on a state tax return. So, U.S. is very peculiar. Each state is different, and it's a minefield if you're going into the U.S. Canada is a lot easier.
And Nick, when you were going through that, I mean, some of the background information, and if this was more Sandrine, that's okay, we can move on. Did you have to kind of think where you were shipping to and how that online process worked?
Like Ernie said before, like the minefield we're not interested in. Like sometimes we never want to be like huge and big and take the entire world, because I like to have I like to sleep at night and like just not thinking about all those kind of logistic at all. So it was Canada only. We do ship a little bit in the States because we used to have tourists coming to our stores, but mainly it's Canada, and we're not very into getting into those complicated laws and
the necessary evils of the world. Ernie, there's a big difference between when you're selling services and when you're selling product. When you're selling product, I would imagine you know exactly where you're shipping, and sales tax rules, at least in Canada, are fairly clear. What if you're selling a service?
If I'm selling a service, generally I sell the service, it's based on bill to and not necessarily where the service is rendered or a ship to, because there is no ship to. There's effectively a bill to. Depending on the type of service, there's a lot of varying place of supply rules on services. You could have services like getting a haircut, that's a local service, and that's going to be charged GST, QST. You have other services like doing an inventory count in a jurisdiction, which the bank in Toronto has asked you to do, but the inventory count is in New Brunswick. So you have to charge New Brunswick sales tax rate on that. So there's a lot of different rules on services. There's a publication called B103 on the federal website that talks about all these different place supply rules for services. Goods, pretty easy. It's based on bill to, based on ship to, pardon me, and not bill to. So you want to buy a present for your brother that lives in BC, you'll charge them the GST and possibly the provincial sales tax in BC.
No, and like you said, Ernie, it's a minefield. There's so much information, and again, your services. Then you got to maybe think of IP addresses and where somebody's coming from. So there's a whole slew of information that are challenging for entrepreneurs.
We could
Thank
spend
you very
a
much.
show on it.
Thanks very much, Ernie. Much appreciated. And as we do each week, and I haven't asked this question in a little while, but I'm really happy to be asking it of Annick. Annick, what would be your one piece of advice for today's entrepreneur?
After COVID, I would say when facing adversity, take a step back, look at the old picture, and see it as an opportunity to make things better.
Thank you very much, Annick. Definitely wise words. My quick takeaway is kind of like that. You have to reinvent yourself. We've said it often on the show. You have to reinvent yourself when you have to, and don't take long to do that because sometimes you don't have that time to pivot.
Correct.
Annick, thanks so much, and your optimism after a tough year is a breath of fresh air. Thanks for joining us on the show tonight.
Thanks to you. Thanks to having me here.
Thanks as well to Ernie Furt and to you, Josh Miller. So nice to have you back. We'll have you back perhaps once more in a few months' time.
I would look forward to that, Dan. That's so much fun. I miss it.
Well, thanks for your insight as well. And we'll be back in 2 weeks here on Today's Entrepreneur. Don't forget today'sentrepreneur.org for over a decade worth of shows hosted by Josh to inspire you and your entrepreneur friends. And we'll be back here in a couple of weeks.